This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with the massive scandal in Minnesota that has taken place under Governor Tim Walz's watch. According to the State Department of Human Services, Tim Walz is 100% responsible for widespread fraud in the state. More than 400 employees of Minnesota's DHS have accused him of failing to act despite warnings. They posted on X, "We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud, but no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports." Now, this comes amid revelations of widespread money laundering, some of the worst stuff we've ever seen out of a state government. It's been revealed that hundreds of millions of dollars that was supposed to be for child food assistance during the pandemic that involved a network of nonprofits and affiliates largely run through the Somali community in Minnesota that have claimed to have fed thousands of hungry children and provide services to the homeless. Well, money was actually going to funding lavish lifestyles, going to kickbacks, and millions of dollars were going overseas, some of it allegedly funneled to a Somali terror group. This is taxpayer dollars. Many of the people charged over this, 78 of the 86 people charged so far, are of Somali ancestry. Now, here is Tim Walz being asked about this, being asked about the fraud on NBC.
Dozens of people of East African descent have been charged, convicted, and sentenced for stealing more than $1 billion in taxpayer money from government programs during COVID. As you know, Governor, that is more than Minnesota spends each year to run its Department of Corrections. So I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals. Those people are going to jail. We're doing everything we can. But to demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy.
Under Tim Walz's watch, you have Somalis embezzling money from American taxpayers. The money is being sent back to Somalia and even reportedly ending up in the hands of terrorists. Now, President Donald Trump has blasted Tim Walz, insisting there's something wrong with him.
You know what? I think there's something wrong with him. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into his state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country. It's got a name, but it doesn't function like a country. Yeah, there's something wrong with Walz.
Yeah, under Tim Walz, Minnesota's taxpayers have been allegedly footing the bill for terrorism. Now, this guy was close to being the vice president of the United States. America could have had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And the mainstream media, well, they were pushing for that, weren't they? This is how Tim Walz was presented by the leftist media.
Midwestern dad, like super clean cut vibe.
Everybody likes
right?
Tim Walz.
So plain spoken and relatable.
As moderate and independent as it comes.
Pretty moderate Democrat.
I always knew him as a moderate. One of the most moderate.
Very moderate record.
The new moderate.
I think this is the new moderate.
Far from progressive.
He's right down the middle.
He's not just an old white man.
Tim Walz beats America. You know,
Talks like a regular person.
Tim Walz is the opposite of weird.
Walz is basically younger Joe Biden.
Regular old Joe out there.
If you're a homeowner in America, you need to listen to this. The FBI has been warning about a type of real estate fraud on the rise called title theft, and your equity is the target. This is how it works. Criminals forge your signature on a single document, use a fake notary stamp, and file it with the county, and just like that, on record, they own your home. Using your ownership, they can take out loans against your equity or even sell your property, and you won't know about it until foreclosure or collection notices show up in the mail. That's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock so you can protect your equity, and find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code POWER at hometitlelock.com. You'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title records, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud occurs, their US-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix it. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. That's hometitlelock.com, promo code POWER, or use the link below. Joining us now is John Hinderaker, president of the Centre of the American Experiment. John, thank you so much for your time. Let's start with Tim Walz and this massive fraud scandal. I mean, this has to be some of the worst stuff that we've ever seen out of a state government. Minnesota taxpayers allegedly footing the bill for terrorism. I want to get your thoughts on all of this, and should Tim Walz resign?
Well, first of all, Gabriella, this scandal has been with us for a long time. My organization, Center of the American Experiment, has been writing about it for almost 4 years now.
Wow.
There have been, in the Feeding Our Future scandal alone, which is one of a web of scandals involving the Somali community here in Minnesota, but in that scandal alone, there have been 78 people indicted. There have been 2 criminal trials resulting in convictions. There have been more than 50 guilty pleas. This has been going on for years, but for some reason it has just recently really hit the national press. The New York Times had a big story on it that was very critical of Tim Walz. And one of the notable features of this whole story, Gabriella, is that Tim Walz and his administration, he's the governor of Minnesota, he runs the state government. They've had nothing to do with these frauds. They haven't prosecuted anyone. They haven't gotten any convictions. They've done nothing. They've just been bystanders. And all of these prosecutions have been brought by the federal government, by the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Minnesota. And so it really is one of the all-time worst performances by a governor that we have ever seen.
Oh, absolutely. And there are now serious questions over what is going on in Minneapolis. I mean, what other crimes have occurred under his watch?
Well, there are numerous scandals. I mean, there's scandals in child care programs, scandals in an autism program, scandal in a program where they were giving people advice about how to get housing. This is actually a Medicaid program, and it was concluded that there was not a single dollar spent in that program out of $100 million that wasn't fraudulent. 100% of that program consisted of criminal fraud. So it's been one scandal after another. The assistant U.S. attorney who's prosecuted these cases says that they add up to billions of dollars stolen from the taxpayers on Tim Walz's watch.
Unbelievable. And now more than 400 employees of Minnesota's Department of Human Services say that Tim Walz, he's 100% responsible for the widespread frauds, accusing him of failing to act despite plenty of warnings, and even saying that he was discrediting fraud reports. I mean, unbelievable. Now, it's also been revealed that Kamala Harris was warned. She, of course, already admitted that she regrets picking Tim Walz as her running mate. And it really is, the fact that she picked him is a reflection of the state of the Democratic Party. But she admitted in her book that Tim Walz was not her first choice, while of course accusing Americans of being homophobic, saying that's why she didn't pick Pete Buttigieg. But it has been revealed that a group of Minnesota state government employees wrote to Kamala Harris and the DNC multiple times, warning them about Tim Walz and what they described as his incompetence, I should say, fraud scandals and retaliation. So the Minnesota Department of Human Service employees account posted, "We tried our best to keep the public informed as our tweets are public. Maybe Kamala Harris turned a blind eye to fraud like her running mate." What do you make of this? Do you think Kamala, absolutely regrets picking Tim Walz?
Well, first of all, Gabriella, she put out a short list of potential vice presidential nominees. Pete Buttigieg was not on it. As far as we know, he was never seriously considered as a vice presidential nominee. The guy that she really wanted was Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, and she almost picked him. In fact, the rally where she was going to announce the VP choice was in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, because it was supposed to be Josh Shapiro. But the 11th hour, the anti-Semites in the Democratic party rose up on Twitter and objected, and they gave her so much grief that she panicked and she defaulted to Tim Walz. That's how he got the vice presidential nomination. I think there was very little vetting of him beforehand.
Yeah, and he's very uninspiring as a candidate. Tampon Timmy, he earned himself that nickname. Let's talk about Donald Trump. He's announced a pause on migration from third world countries following last week's devastating attack where an Afghan national who entered the US under the Biden administration as part of Biden's Operation Allies Welcome program during its disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan. That person is accused of shooting 2 National Guard troops. Sadly, one has died. Now, it has raised fresh concerns about the vetting process under Biden, where tens of thousands of people from Afghanistan entered the US, and there are concerns that the vetting process was flawed. Can I get your thoughts around that?
Well, first of all, Gabriella, yeah, okay, these people came from Afghanistan, and some of them were known to us, including this guy, this murderer, is somebody who actually did work with our troops. I would say more to the point, Joe Biden invited 10 million or more illegal aliens across the southern border. They were not vetted at all. We have no idea who those 10 million people were. And we think a number of them were terrorists, a number were drug dealers, and so on. So this whole business of unrestricted open borders, mass immigration has been a total disaster. And Donald Trump is absolutely correct to want to put the brakes on this third world immigration indefinitely, and I hope until the end of his term.
Plenty of security concerns. You know, President Trump was speaking about this at the time. He was speaking about it in 2021. And anyway, what happened last week was a horrific tragedy. Donald Trump's also announced that he's cancelling executive orders signed using Joe Biden's autopen. He posted on Truth Social any document signed by Sleepy Joe Biden with the autopen, which was approximately 92% of them, is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect. I'm hereby cancelling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden because the people who operated the autopen did so illegally. Now, there's a bit of a dispute around whether Trump can actually do this. Legal analysts have disputed the validity of Trump's argument, arguing that the autopen signatures are valid. But Republicans argue that the Biden autopen presidency is one of the biggest political scandals in history. John, can I get your assessment?
Well, the autopen scandal, there's no question about the fact that Joe Biden, I think for the entire 4 years of his presidential term, really had very little idea what was going on. It was just being propped up by the people around him. You saw it on one video after another. He was not all there.
No.
I think that was a huge scandal. The autopens are just one part of it. But I would make a much more fundamental point, Gabriella, and that is that Donald Trump can revoke Joe Biden's executive orders at will, not just the ones with the autopen. He already has revoked a number of Biden's executive orders. He can revoke all of them. One president can't bind the next president with an executive order. The thing that he can't undo is the pardons that Joe Biden gave. Joe Biden pardoned his family, pardoned Anthony Fauci, pardoned a number of people. The pardons, Trump can't do anything about. But the other executive orders, whether they were signed with an autopen or not, Trump has the power to simply revoke them.
And the amount of pardons, I mean, absolutely extraordinary under Joe Biden. Democratic Senator Mark Kelly has doubled down on his call for military members to defy unlawful orders from US President Donald Trump. But he's been pressed to name a single illegal order that President Trump has given, and he hasn't been able to name one.
Asked you about the substance of this video and your message in it. What specific orders do you believe President Trump made that you consider unlawful?
Well, so this is looking forward, but let me give you a pass, an outline of things that he has said. In 2016, he said that the U.S. military will follow his illegal orders. He was given, he said something on a debate stage and was reminded that would be illegal, and he said the military will not refuse his orders, regardless of whether they're legal or not. He also talked about shooting protesters in the legs. How un-American, how unconstitutional is that? Fortunately, there was a Secretary of Defense that has stopped this. He's also talked about sending troops into U.S. cities to use those cities and people for training.
John, if he can't name an illegal order, why did he take part in this video encouraging military members to defy illegal orders?
Gabrielle, this is a real scandal. So 6 elected Democrats, including Senator Mark Kelly, put out this video in which their ad clearly implied that President Trump is issuing one illegal order after another and is a threat to our Constitution, and that military personnel should disobey orders that they're getting down the chain of command. And the truth is that Trump has not issued a single illegal order. Mark Kelly couldn't name one. Others who participated in that Democratic Party ad, they couldn't name one. There aren't any. And so Mark Kelly, I think, could be in some trouble here. He's a retired military officer. There's an investigation going on right now in the Defense Department as to whether Kelly should be recalled to active duty and then court-martialed, which could happen. And personally, I'd like to see it happen.
Finally, US and Ukrainian officials have sat down in Florida to discuss outlines of a peace deal with Russia. Steve Witkoff is expected to meet with Russian counterparts later this week. John, what's your assessment? Are we getting some progress here?
It's very hard to tell. We don't know what's being said behind closed doors. I would say this. I think the real obstacle here is that the Russians have been very obstinate. I mean, as far as we can tell, they really haven't backed off on any of their demands. One of the things they want is they want to get Ukrainian territory that they have not been able to occupy militarily. And that's really pretty outrageous. You know, when there's a war fought and there's a ceasefire, typically what happens is that the lines are going to be drawn basically where the armies are, like what happened at the end of World War II. And the Russians have been actually holding out to get more Ukrainian territory than they have been able to take militarily. That seems to be a non-starter from the Ukrainian point of view. So I think what we really don't know is whether the Russians are willing to make a deal, or are they simply going to stick with the really unreasonable demands that they have been making all along.
John Hinderaker, President of the Center of the American Experiment, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Joining us now is newsroom editor at Unheard, James Billow. James, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. We've spoken about before, there have been plenty of horrible lefties who have celebrated and mocked the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That also included the Oxford Union president-elect, George Aberoni, who previously debated Charlie Kirk. And when Charlie Kirk was shot, this guy posted, "Charlie Kirk got shot, let's effing go." He said that in a WhatsApp group. He then posted on Instagram, "Charlie Kirk got shot, LOL." He's now opened up about what was going through his mind when he posted those messages. And he said that it was to get a laugh and to spark a conversation.
You wanted to get a reaction?
Exactly, I wanted to get a reaction. I wanted to have a conversation and, you know...
A laugh?
Almost exactly, like a laugh and a bit of a reaction. And kind of, I realised afterwards that, you know, that wasn't the right way to go about it.
I mean, it's pretty sick stuff saying he wanted to get a laugh. What do you make of this?
Well, it's the fact that we got not just one of those messages, but two, which clearly showed this wasn't just some flight of fancy or a moment of impulse. He clearly meant what he said, and he doubled down on it. I don't remotely buy the excuse or the justification that he was just having a bit of fun and trying to spur conversation. If anything, that's doing the opposite. You know, you're just going to inflame tensions and make people even angrier, and it's just a completely insensitive thing to say. He is the representative of arguably the most hallowed institution in all of Britain, Oxford University, and whether he likes it or not, he is responsible for that. And he really sullied the name of the university and himself there. And I have to say, it was pretty unforgivable what he ended up doing.
I completely agree. We're just 1 month away now until Zohran Mamdani is sworn in as mayor of New York City. And you've written a fascinating piece for Unheard about the 60,000 New Yorkers who voted for Donald Trump last year and then Zohran Mamdani this year. And really the message that those voters are sending is that the status quo isn't working. I was also listening to an old interview with Charlie Kirk, actually only from a few months ago, earlier this year, around his thoughts on the rise of Mamdani, and he argued that young voters, if they're voting for him, they're really sending a distress signal. partly due to the economic reality. You know, they've been priced out of the housing market. You know, it's far more expensive for them to get a home than it was for their parents' generation. So this generation is significantly worse off than the generation before them. Many people are relying on buy now, pay later programs for groceries. I mean, not just concert tickets, but actually using buy now, pay later programs for groceries. So it's a huge issue. And look, you've noted there are plenty of voters who are not loyal to anyone. Can you talk to us about what you learned from speaking to these voters?
Right. I think that's exactly right. What you mentioned about the economic conditions at the moment. I mean, we've got a situation where millennials are door dashing $9 burritos, doing the pay now, buy later kind of thing. And it is pretty troubling what's going on over here, especially with the rise of ChatGPT and AI. We're now at something like 25% unemployment rate for college graduates in the white collar space. So yeah, a lot of these are floating in the background. And as you mentioned, I did this piece on the Zohran Mamdani voter, Trump voter phenomenon. There's something like 60,000 of them. I think there are actually probably a lot more than that, but that's the official number. And what I discovered was that there was just a huge dissatisfaction with the status quo as things stand. And they knew that these voters knew that they weren't going to be getting the answer they wanted from the quote unquote establishment, whether they be Republicans or Democrats. That's why they swung so hard from the right over to the left. And I think it's something we're going to see going forward. I think the left-right distinction is breaking down now. We're seeing a populist establishment distinction. And whoever can speak to some of these economic concerns and anxieties that a lot of young people, but also working class, middle class people are feeling, I think they're going to do very well. And this is a really fascinating time in American politics.
Yeah, it certainly is. How will this play into next year's midterm elections? They're less than a year away now, and they're, of course, about as high stakes as election can be.
Right. Well, I have to give credit to Mamdani here. He did, in the early 2020s, his politics were basically a grab bag of BLM nonsense. It was racial identitarianism, it was COVID maximalism, and it was this kind of woke cultural emphasis. Now he was just hammering home the message of economics, 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 and affordability. And I think the Republicans can take a lesson here. If they want to win or at least recover some of their losses, they have to focus on affordability as an issue. I'm talking about gas prices, electricity bills, grocery bills, and the same lesson goes to the Democrats as well. Whichever party can really seize those issues and prove that they're doing something about it is going to win.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Jasmine Crockett. We love her, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She's fronted the Liberal media to explain why she suggested that Republicans took donations from pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Only it was, of course, a different Jeffrey Epstein. So she went on MSN Now to explain herself, insisting that she didn't mislead anyone at all because she, in fact, clarified. She said, Jeffrey Epstein.
I made clear that there was a Jeffrey Epstein. They knew on the other side that I did not have time to actually pull up and actually research, especially since that particular one that Lee Zeldin got up in an uproar about was specifically out of the New York area. We know that he was out of that area. So, and this obviously was not done post Jeffrey Epstein's life. So I made sure that I said a Jeffrey Epstein.
But you were trying to insinuate that it was the
I absolutely was insinuating that it could be possible. That is true.
James, I'm starting to think that Jasmine Crockett, she might actually like giving train wreck interviews.
There's clearly some kind of sadomasochistic tendency going on here. And I think a part of it might come from the fact that any attention is good attention. And she's clearly learned that apologizing for her mistakes only invites more attention to her other mistakes. So why not just double down on the lie and just go ahead with it? So I think if she becomes the face of the Democratic Party, they are in for a very tough ride in 2026. And I imagine that Republicans will be doing all they can to make her the face of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the final point to be made here is that if you keep giving these car crash interviews, it's going to become synonymous with your name. She's young, it's early on in her career, but she's already becoming so discredited that she's already hurting the brand here. And with the party facing the most pivotal elections in living memory, this could be a crucial moment for them.
Now, we've covered a lot this year, from Trump's inauguration, from Mamdani's win to Greta Thunberg's PR stunts, backfiring spectacularly. But James, I want to get your thoughts. Reflecting on 2025, we're now at the end of the year almost. And there, of course, have been some wild, wonderful and not so wonderful moments. Looking back, what stands out to you?
I, first of all, have just been stunned by just how much this moment we're in has changed from 2024, 2023 to 2025. The 2024 and before then was the kind of the politics of the possible. This is very much the politics of the impossible. Anything you don't expect to happen ends up happening. If Trump wants to annex Greenland, it's going to happen. If Trump wants to take on Canada, it's going to happen. And I think what we saw with the Ukraine-Russia meeting as well, sorry, the Ukraine Oval Office meeting was a testament to that. This is the, as I've mentioned before, the ultimate disruptor. He's willing to shake up the consensus and take on the establishment. And I think that's why he has been so impressive. Now, there have been a lot of shortfalls and a lot of pitfalls, but again, it has just been an absolute roller coaster ride. I think with Biden, you had a kind of managed decline, whereas Trump is going in all directions, and it's been fun to cover and fun to watch.
It has certainly been fun to cover. Very entertaining as well. What about a winner and loser of the year?
Well, the winner, I would have to say, I don't think is particularly well known, but she's probably the most powerful woman people have never heard of, and that's Susie Wiles. She is Donald Trump's chief of staff, and she is basically the second most powerful woman in the office. And what makes Susie so impressive is that she, in a famously turbulent presidency, she has guided the ship all the way through, and not only during the administration, but during his campaign too. And she has been the steady pair of hands, putting those guardrails up for Trump when he needs it, picking the right people for the job, and also just guiding the administration through towards their North Star. She is the safe pair of hands the administration needs, and I guarantee that she will be there at the end of this administration in 2028. As for the loser, I would say I was pretty disappointed with Elon Musk's work in Washington. Now, whether you blame Musk or the bureaucracy he was dealing with is another question, and I think that's a fair point to ask. But on its own terms, those did fail, in my view. They didn't do, notwithstanding a few successes on USAID and things like that, they didn't really achieve much cost cutting or anything to that effect. And I think he left Washington a defeated man. And that really culminated in his bid to launch this America Party that was, didn't even launch. So I would say Elon Musk is probably my loser of 2025.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. To be honest, I think we all had high hopes for Elon Musk, and then it was a pretty dramatic exit in the end. Now, of course, we cover a lot of crazy meltdowns, a lot of media meltdowns from the leftist media. What about its reporting and what stood out to you this year?
Well, one of the ones that sticks out in memory was Kate Attia. She was a Washington Post columnist, and we were speaking about Charlie Kirk just now, and she just completely fabricated a quote by Charlie Kirk, something to do with how Black women have lower IQ or something to that effect. And she was deservedly fired from the Washington Post for that. But instead of just taking it on the chin and accepting it, she then launched this bizarre campaign to try and get herself reinstated. And she said it was that this was a campaign against free speech, and that she was raising the profile for Black women, and the Washington Post were trying to do her down. And as if that wasn't enough, she then posts a picture of herself fully garbed with a rose muzzling her mouth and a picture of a burning scroll of the Washington Post saying censored. It was the most nonsensical thing I've ever seen. A couple of others that stand out, the BBC selectively editing the Trump documentary. You would have thought after all these years it might have learned its lesson. And to this day, we still have not had the minutes from the meeting regarding the reported bias within the institution that came about 8 months ago. So that is pretty disappointing, I have to say. And then I also think this has been a real victory for independent journalists. I mean, my own publication, Unheard, has been able to get a seat at the table at the Oval Office, and it's actually been pretty nice to see. So I think credit to the Trump administration for bringing new voices in there. I don't like what it's doing with the Pentagon and kicking some other voices out, but again, I think this is a very interesting time. We just have to see where it goes from there.
100%. Well, we certainly appreciate your voice, all the work you do at Unheard, and thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joining us now is Kinsey Schofield, royal commentator and host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Kinsey, it's great to see you. I love the hot pink. Don't you just love celebrities who have so much TDS they have to flee America, only to come crawling back? Because it's been revealed that Ellen DeGeneres and her wife Portia, they're reportedly considering a return to California just a year after fleeing the US following Trump's re-election. They moved to the Cotswolds and had reportedly intended to stay in the English countryside while Donald Trump was in the White House, but they've changed their minds. Apparently, it's too cold over in the UK. Kinsey, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, she did admit in a recent interview to fleeing Trump, saying, "We got to the UK the day before the election and woke up with lots of text from our friends with crying emojis." And I was like, "He got in," she explained. And then she looks at Portia and she's like, "We're staying here." But Ellen is jonesing for a Hollywood comeback. Over the summer, she signed with William Morris Endeavor to represent her. She said she's handling the next phase of her career very carefully. And to which I would say, don't you have to when you've been canceled? I don't think Hollywood wants her back.
Yeah, isn't it funny? You make a big deal out of Donald Trump, winning the presidency. Majority of Americans, they voted for him. And she's coming back to America. It was all maybe a publicity stunt after all. Now, this will surprise you, but Meghan Markle shared a video of herself preparing a Thanksgiving turkey. I mean, who could have seen that coming? But plenty of people are roasting Meghan, calling her out, accusing her of making a big mistake in the kitchen, preparing the food with plenty of jewelry on. Kinsey, not the reaction Meghan would have been hoping for while she was sharing that video.
No, Salmonella Sussex is what they're calling her. I mean, she usually has her hair down and hovering all over the food. Critics say she's presenting herself as a lifestyle expert while basically ignoring kitchen hygiene. Bacteria and E. coli. I mean, these are things that will get in the crevices of your jewelry and metals. No matter how hard you wash your hands, you can still transfer it all over the kitchen. But I would argue that this is a pattern of irresponsibility. For instance, one woman threatened to sue Meghan for skin burns after she made Meghan's bath salts from season 1 of With Love, Meghan. So it's just this pattern of not being responsible, not doing your due diligence. And I think that that's what annoys people. Stop telling us you're an expert and then doing things that are dangerous.
And it seems like it's all for show. Well, she's also announced what she says is a full circle moment, and that's a brand collaboration with Soho House. So Meghan posted this video to Instagram. So Kinsey, she's posted this video and the caption she wrote, "Talk about a full circle moment in my old stomping ground of West Hollywood with a brand, family and friends that have been part of my life for so long and also part of my love story with H since our very first date was at an SH restaurant. So excited to introduce as ever official with Soho House." Kinsey, I'm not sure if I'd describe it as a full circle moment, but she loves any excuse to call Prince Harry H and also to remind people of their love story, of course, and that she has a brand.
Have you ever seen somebody that seal claps for themselves as much as Meghan Markle does? She's constantly clapping for herself. But I think you're seeing Meghan secure these lame pop-ups in friendly spaces like Soho House and Godmother's bookstore in Montecito, as opposed to big box stores like Target or Neiman Marcus, because she doesn't want people like me getting my hands on actual sales figures. Her friends will keep her failed business a secret. I'm sure she's moving a little product, but my spies tell me it's not much. Meghan still lives by the motto, fake it till you make it, and that's never been more evident than in 2025.
Well, let's talk about Meghan and Harry in 2025. I want to get all your thoughts because if we kind of look back on the year and how she's been trying to push this brand, the rebrand, and she continues to, of course, flaunt her royal titles. In her Netflix lifestyle show with Love Meghan, she told a guest, "It's so funny that you keep saying Meghan Markle. You know I'm a Sussex now," because the whole world must have missed that she married Prince Harry. And a recent cover story for Harper's Bazaar magazine reported that Meghan, before she would make an entrance to a room at a private New York City townhouse, a staffer had to announce her as Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, despite the fact that there was only 1 or 2 people in the house. I mean, for someone who's so focused on herself, her brand, her PR, there have been plenty of blunders along the way this year.
Yeah, I think 2025 will be known as the year she lost her Netflix deal, no matter how hard Netflix tried to shove her down our throats. It's not been as humiliating as Spotify because Netflix handled it so differently, and Bill Simmons wasn't there to call them, you know what, grifters. And I think it'll be known as the year that she was accused of stealing clothing that she wore throughout her different photo shoots for her royal archive, a woman that's no longer a working royal who doesn't need a royal archive. So 2025 has, in my opinion, been ultimately a humiliating year for Meghan Markle.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I really do. Now, Prince William, he's publicly declared that behind every average man is an even better wife, in a sweet nod to Princess Catherine, his wife of 14 years. And he made the comments while speaking at a youth club that aims to support young people facing challenges such as poverty and bullying. And he spoke about the importance of family, Kinsey, the importance of family time, coming together for meals, and also explaining that children shouldn't be, you know, on their screen so much and disappearing off elsewhere. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this ultimately was a comment he made during a discussion about the importance of having a supportive partner. And I just love that. Behind every average man, there's an even better wife. There's another saying here in Hollywood that goes, behind Johnny Depp, Will Smith, and Prince Harry is an average woman that will destroy her husband. So Prince Williams is obviously far more uplifting than my saying, but I just love to see the prince and princess thrive in the UK.
Oh, absolutely. Now let's talk about Fergie. Sarah Fergie Ferguson is said to be considering a 6-figure sum sit-down interview after being, of course, officially cut loose from the royal family, but there are already reports about what she will and won't cover. So their reports are that the mother of 2 has been tipped to partake in a bombshell interview targeting several members of the firm, including King Charles, as a form of revenge, perhaps. But she probably won't be speaking about her ex-husband, of course, formerly known as Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Kinsey, do you think that's right?
I think that if somebody were to give her a significant amount of money, I don't think she knows much about what happened with Jeffrey Epstein. That's a lot of what happened that would be interesting to the public involved Andrew Mountbatten Windsor behind closed doors, and there's no way he would be honest with her about that. If she gets that book deal, we want to hear about Princess Diana, and she has a lot of gossip on Princess Diana. Remember, they were scheming to leave their husbands at the same time to humiliate them in the 90s. And we'd hear about Harry and Meghan. So I think that if she were to write a tell-all, that is where the focus would be: Princess Diana, Harry, and Meghan Markle.
Okay, Kinsey Schofield, royal commentator and host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.